Welcome to Make More Marbles. My name is Brad Hart, and today I have the distinct pleasure of welcoming a very special guest. She has been a corporate maven for many years. She worked in Fortune 500 companies, an HR professional for a long time. I'm probably going to get reported to HR on this podcast, but luckily she's not there anymore. She has a wonderful new business that she's been running for the last few years out of COVID, which a lot of people have made change in COVID. She has a leadership program called Tri Wisdom. And we're very, very excited to have her on the show today, Tri Nguyen. Hi, Tri. How are you?
Hi, Brad. I'm doing well. How are you today?
Doing good. I'm always excited to talk to folks from California. You're out in Huntington Beach. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Yes.
Wonderful. And well, we were connected through my fiance, Jasmine, who, as we both know, has a wonderful course creation agency. And she was one of my clients. I had to fire her because, hashtag integrity. I didn't want to get reported to HR. So that's how we got together. And then you and I just got connected by Jasmine. We don't know a whole lot about each other. So we caught up a little bit before this call. And I'd love to do this podcast and just kind of get to know you a little bit better. And this is me learning about you for the first time. So I'm very excited to do that and to hear all about your incredible wins so far and what you're working on. So give us a little bit of background that got you where you're at, and let's do that.
Okay. Thank you for teeing it up, and thank you for having me, everybody. I started like anybody else in the corporate world, landed in human resources after probably 10 tries in college of different careers, finally ended up in HR. But I think I had the best training because I started my career with Johnson & Johnson. And this was right after the Tylenol scare. So there was a lot of companies, there was no such thing as Six Sigma, but we learned the Six Sigma because J&J implemented it then. So I attribute my experience and everything about me today back to that time because it really opened up my mind, my mindset, everything about my leadership. And so that set me on to staying in HR for a while, 26 years to be exact. And prior to becoming a coach and a Vistage Chair, I was in human resources, did everything. And then now, I love what I do, being a Vistage Chair, being a coach. And then, with the launch of my program, it's been really exciting.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And over 26 years, I'm sure you learned a lot. So the Tylenol thing would have happened in the 90s or early 2000s, somewhere in there?
It was in the mid 80s.
Oh, 80s. Oh, my Lord. So that's,
yes.
I was born in the mid 80s. So 37 years ago, roughly.
Yeah, I'm really dating myself. So
no, it's interesting because I remember that happening in my lifetime for some reason. Maybe it was another thing similar to that, like Advil or something's going to kill you. Like everything's going to save your life and then kill you. Alternatively, eggs are great. Eggs are the devil. And then, butter and then this and then oils and then that, how it goes. So that's really interesting. So what were some of the biggest leadership lessons you gained working with Johnson & Johnson and seeing Six Sigma, which now is kind of a household name, come out of that?
Yeah. Well, first, it wasn't called Six Sigma back then. It was actually Kaizen. So that's even further dating myself. I learned so much about leadership and, I learned what to do and what not to do. And for the most part, it was more what not to do. And I don't mean this as a disrespect for any leaders out there, but the corporate world operated. And back then in the mid 80s and early 90s, there were not a lot of women in the workplace. Women were starting to enter the workforce, and women were also starting to take on leadership positions. There weren't that many. And so there were a lot of things around the glass ceiling, and really that integration was a big change for both male and female. So what I learned, the biggest leadership lesson really was about integrating the need for both the masculine and feminine energy in leadership. I feel like prior to, and thus far, I would say probably maybe of late before 2000, there were just a lot of misconception about what true leadership is about. And for a lot of women who were trying to play in quote unquote a man's world, it was very difficult for them to really be who they are and really live from their true gifts and talents. So I feel like what leadership's about is a combination of both male and female, but also three distinct components, which I think has been something that's kind of missing for a while. And this is something Jasmine and I really worked together on. I felt that leadership had been about IQ, which is definitely execution and productivity. No doubt that's necessary because that's how we make money, right? And then EQ came along in the mid 90s, which was amazing because for the first time, someone quantified and said, actually, I know who it is. I can't think of his name right now, but he quantified Goldman. There you go. Quantified. And he said, basically, EQ is even more important, or at least equally important. Well, I feel that both of those attributes are very important, but I also feel that there's something missing. And the biggest missing link, I feel, is what I call MQ, or mentorship quotient. And mentorship quotient is really about being the leader that others want to follow and passing on your knowledge and guiding the next generation of leaders.
Oh, I love that. And, you know, my background is in masterminds, and that's basically a lot of mentorship and guidance and peer accountability and all that. So I think that's definitely the missing link. And it's so funny, like you could look at a problem for 20 years and not see that piece missing. And you might separate in your brain. You might have like a scotoma where you're like, oh, I see leadership being IQ and EQ over here. And then I see mentorship really as a really important thing, but it's a separate thing. But the reality is mentorship is a part of leadership. And it just takes somebody like you yourself to come along and be like, oh yeah, these actually fit in the same puzzle box to make it really known to people. So how has that breakthrough shifted your perspective as well as the way you teach and mentor and serve others?
Well, that's a great question. You know, when I embarked on this, I had no idea to even call it MQ. I just knew it was something missing. As I worked and developed my leadership program, I put it, you know, when I left corporate, or when I left my last employment job in 2015 and embarking on this journey in leadership and leadership development, working with leaders at the C-suite level, I didn't know what to call it. All I could see was there's something missing here, but I just didn't know what to call it. So I put around, you know, worked on my leadership, felt that there was a lot of, you know, stuff about the inside, what I call the leading from the inside, because leaders need to be who they are and who they want to follow first before they can lead other people. So that was always the way I felt like leadership was missing. Well, then as I embark further and try to teach people how to really step into their authentic gifts and their higher self and their greater perspective, tapping into a deeper sense of knowingness from a leadership perspective, that was when I realized I had the breakthrough probably around 2019 when I founded the Wisdom Tree and was still putting all the puzzle pieces together. And it kind of took shape, you know, right around after COVID. I just had this epiphany one day. I woke up and go, you know, I really want to create a life where I don't have to work as hard, but I want to create a life where I can reach so many people. And the only way to do that was to have that scalability piece, which was to do it through an e-learning format. And that took another shape. And then one day I was meditating on this IQ, EQ, and this piece that I don't know what to call. And then a friend of mine said something about the need for mentorship. I'm like, oh my God, that's it. It's MQ. So that was how I came up and I coined the term mentorship quotient.
That's beautiful. Okay. So you went for bigger impact, scalability. You wanted to, you know, not be in that corporate world anymore. I've never been in the corporate world. I've been in very small businesses,
lucky you,
medium-sized organizations. What would you say it's not all bad, right? There's certainly lessons that you maybe didn't realize at the time, but like have helped set you up for success. Because a lot of people have never done either that get into business. They really tend to struggle because it requires you to think in different ways. You know, you trade one job for 7 jobs in a lot of cases. You don't realize you're doing that, but that's what you're doing. Especially at first, you maybe we're a cog in a wheel in the bigger machine. Now you're the whole machine. So you're stuck on that. A lot of people don't realize just all that takes to actually run a corporation or a business, you know, and just keep all that straight. So like, what are some of the things that you learned in, let's say, Johnson & Johnson, some of the other Fortune 500s you worked with that actually do translate to the startup and medium-sized business?
Yeah, so definitely, well, 3 key things that come to mind. Number 1 is the need for continuous improvement. You know, that was honed in when I was at J&J. And so J&J was always looking at reinventing itself. And so I think that translates to continuous improvement from a leadership perspective. And a lot of people, and you've probably heard this terminology, leaders strive to be the best versions of themselves, because who we are today, if we don't continue to change and reinvent ourselves, then we're not going to be the best versions of ourselves. And eventually we'll become stagnant and obsolete. So I think continuous improvement is one of the biggest lessons that I learned. And the second, I think, I didn't learn this in corporate, because I think in corporate America, and I don't want to badmouth corporate America, because I think there are a lot of great things about corporate America. Because, you certainly have a lot of resources, you have a lot of people, you learn a lot, right? Because the corporations have a lot of resources to put in for development, and which is what I appreciate. That's the second thing, is continuous development, not only for yourself, but for your employees and your product and your services. You have to continue to develop and refine, and always find that next S curve, whatever that next thing is in your field, in your service.
Let's break down what an S curve is for people that don't know that at all.
Well, the S curve, if you think about the curve, it looks like an S, right? When you start off, it's the way companies grow. So you start off at startup, and then maybe you dip a little bit, and then eventually you grow, and then you get to maturity at the top of the S.
Right.
At the top of the S.
Flatten out again. Yeah.
Yes. If you don't reinvent, you go into decline. Okay. But that's the reference into, looking for a next S curve. And I think that's the key. Companies that didn't continue to invent itself, there are a lot of companies that maybe you once heard of when you were younger, Brad, and that are not in business anymore. Sears, right?
I think it's only going to go faster, honestly, with the way DAOs are coming about. I mean, think about a top-down organization. The only advantage they have is money, really.
Yeah.
Like at the end of the day, now like a DAO of 10,000 people working, incentivized under the same structure around the world, can spin up $1 billion line of business in a few days, few months, a few weeks. It's like crazy how fast things can happen.
Yes.
And look at what Uniswap and Aave and Curve have done on the blockchain,
right?
Which is nuts. Like you couldn't do that at a corporation. You couldn't innovate that fast, especially with regulations.
Right. Right.
And
look, look how quickly we innovated during COVID. The potential's there, right? But here's the thing in corporate America is that sometimes it's like turning the Titanic. It doesn't happen as fast.
That's
right?
a great analogy. Yeah. It's like a speedboat versus the Titanic. Or
exactly. Exactly. However, it can be done.
Yeah.
And I think it starts with really, and this is the space I play in, which is continuing to develop and honing your people, because those are the people. Without people, they can't innovate. And the development for people, both in the EQ, IQ, and MQ space, that actually can accelerate, it needs to accelerate, outpace the physical growth or the fiscal growth of the organization. Otherwise, you're going to go into obsolete.
I like that. Okay. So what have been the lessons so far? You started your business literally right before the whole world changed.
Yep.
And were you already getting traction? Were you still figuring it out? How long did it take you to get traction? What's been your experience so far? What are your bigger lessons so far? I would just like to hear how the last 4 years have been for you.
Well, everything that I just told you, I experienced, because here's what happened. In 2019, when I founded my company and put together my leadership program, it was still delivered in a brick and mortar perspective, not online, not virtual like now. And so going into 2020, I actually had 2 contracts. And those 2 contracts alone, I had just started. We're talking like 6 months in. And I had gained 2 contracts. And those 2 contracts were worth about $500,000.
Nice.
Okay. And so I was going to go in 2020 looking pretty. And then, of course, we all know what changed March of 2020.
What changed, Tri? What changed?
Yeah, right. Exactly. So that was like, and the 4-letter word, whatever one you want to fill in there.
Yeah.
And so as a single mom, it was like, okay, now what do I do? Now, my Vistage and coaching clients, we obviously adapted to Zoom. Okay. Sure. But this piece it was so passionate for me came to a complete halt. And I spent a few months just really in the blues, down in the dumps and going, what next? And then I started reframing. I started looking at, okay, how can this be a gift? Because everything happens for a reason. I might not like it, but obviously, whatever it is, how do I make lemonades out of lemons, right? And so I spent probably about a year honing in my skills, honing in my coaching, because I knew I had a vision. I wanted to reach the greater audience, but I didn't know about the online and e-learning world. And so I honed in my craft, continued to fine tune my material, and then, really kicked it off in 2021. And what I learned really is what I just shared with you is that, number one, you can't do it alone, right? You mentioned in corporate or in business, in even small to mid-sized businesses, there's a team that you can delegate to. Right. But when you're starting off by yourself, you're it. My old boss used to say, it's a fine line between the person that signs the checks and the person that plugs the toilet. And literally, when you are running your own business, that's exactly what it is. You're everything.
You just described my morning. I sign the check, I plug the toilet, then I call somebody, unplug the toilet, it's the whole thing.
Yeah, exactly. And then, you gain some traction and you start to delegate and you can start to put, money back into the business. Bootstrapping it is one of the toughest things. It's a way for you to really test your resilience, test your patience. It's truly those motivational speakers that say, obstacles are put in your place to see how much you want something. I literally had to knock down some brick walls to be able to get to where I am today.
Yeah.
And I mean, I love Jasmine dearly because it was when I met Jasmine, because I was struggling, kind of pulling it together in the right format for the e-learning format.
Sure.
And man, Jasmine did wonders for me.
Oh, she's incredible.
She is. She's amazing.
And people might think, oh, it's product. It's not that important. You got to market, you got to sell. But when you're really confident in your product, your marketing and sales, even though nobody else can see it right away, you feel more confident and your marketing and selling gets better. You get more persuasive, you get more influential, you step up into your leadership because you have something really great versus if you're kind of subconsciously wonky about your product and you don't know if it's really great yet, and you don't know if it's really polished, you might hold back, you might pull back a little bit. So
to that point, shout out to Jasmine, because even though I had so much stuff, we're talking 30 years of leadership stuff, right? And stuff that I developed a long time ago and stuff I developed recently, but I couldn't pull it all together. And Jasmine helped me. And then that really boosted my confidence. It was after, a morning with her, I'm like, oh my God, I can really do this.
Yeah. It is different. When you strip away all that stuff, it's you and the camera and the people you just sold into this thing. And that's it requires a little bit of a mental magic trick to get yourself to do it. Yep. So I'm really grateful that you two found each other. And I mean, Jasmine does some incredible work. I mean, I show people this workbook all the time. It's 160 some odd page workbook. We have an award-winning program. And this is even her best work. She's gotten way better since she did this. So I'm always blown away by the quality of what she can do.
Oh yeah. I will say something. I'll have a vision.
And her team,
of something.
Of course, not just her, but yeah.
Yeah. I can have a vision of something and then she'll do a mock-up of it. And then the team comes back with something so amazing. It's oh my gosh, yes, it's even better than what I had imagined.
Well, that's beautiful. Well, thank you for sharing that. And I'm loving these little leadership nuggets. Now, when you left your job, I would imagine you've been in corporate for a while. You had some money saved, you had some runway. So how was that experience? Or I don't know, I don't want to assume, but how was that experience, I'm assuming, compared to the bootstrap startup? Do you consider yourself a more risky person? Or are you more risk averse? How did you approach the whole, okay, my income is leaving me and now how do I replace that? And how's that been for you so far?
Oh my gosh, it was really a test of faith. I'll tell you that, because when I was in corporate America, I was making I was at the top of the food chain. I was an executive VP. I had all the perks, all the bonuses.
So what does that mean? Just for people who don't know, myself, I don't really get what that means. Is that 100 grand? Is it 500 grand? Where are we at?
No, my total compensation was 300,000.
Okay. Got it.
Okay. But I was also a single mom and I had gone through a major.
That's a solid salary.
Yeah. It was really, you can really earn a really great living, right?
Yeah.
And I had a great living. That's on top of all the other perks. Okay. But what I found was I wasn't happy. Right. And so I had to make a change. And when I made the change, it was on the heels of a divorce, on the heels of a contentious custody fight.
Yeah.
So financially it impacted me.
Sure.
So when I went off and really like I said, it was a test of faith. There was no more cushion, no more safety net. It was really me and really believing in me and really, really selling me, so to speak, which I had a tough time with.
Yeah.
Because that wasn't who I was,
Right.
I was just this, I hadn't really found my voice. So at the time. So, but, bootstrapping it, you learn a lot too, because you learn to be resilient. You learn to rely on yourself. And again, it's a trust of faith, because if it's too easy, everybody could do it. Right.
Right.
Yeah. So,
well, on the other hand, if you knew how hard it was going to be, like I've been an entrepreneur for a while now, like coming on 20 years, give or take.
Wow.
Like, if you knew how hard it was going to be, you would never start.
Yeah, you're absolutely.
I really feel like the universe is benevolent in the sense, like it gives you just enough of a viewpoint of the future to where like you'll get in motion, but you won't want to quit. Because if you knew how hard it's going to be, and how many ups and downs, and how many times you'll have to reinvent yourself, and how you'll have to keep growing, like who you'll have to become, how hard that is, like you just wouldn't do it.
Yes, and also, here's the thing, and I touch on this in the course, is that there's the element of, your left brain logical thinking, and then the right brain or the creative brain or the knowingness that you really tap into with the universe. And so in this journey, if I relied solely on my brain, my brain was telling me I couldn't do it. The odds were against me, and I was going to fail. And matter of fact, a lot of people told me that. But I was resilient, and I really meditated, prayed about it, really tapped. And the universe, you're right, gave me nuggets. It was like Hansel and Gretel. The universe gave me little pieces of crumbs of bread.
That's all you need sometimes to keep going. And it's just staying in the game until you finally get to the win. Because the wins come few and far between, the big wins.
Yeah.
And the faith is like every day. It's constant.
Yes.
So that's been my experience anyway. And I'd love to hear how you feel about it, because we just had a huge event win. We just had a huge like big win that just took like months and months and even years, if you really think about it, of like planning. And when you start to connect all the little breadcrumbs and the dots going back, it's like years in the making to have this one thing.
Right.
Where now I can finally be like, oh God, it finally paid off. And like, it doesn't even feel real, it's like
totally.
Now I got to pull that same magic trick again in 6 months, It's like,
you persevere, you focus on persevering, which is what's going to fuel you never to give up, right? And secondly, the other thing I learned in this, and that's what kept me going to get to that big win, is to focus on how I want to help people versus focusing on the win, focusing on the money or achieving.
Right? 100%.
Yeah. So every day I got fueled by how many people I talked to, how many people I helped, how many of my coaching clients that said, oh my gosh, it's transformative working with you.
Yeah. So maybe that should be qualified as like the win equals help a lot of people, have a lot of fun, make a lot of money, not just one or two or whatever.
Yeah. Or not just make a lot of money, right? Because that's just the longer win. But
that's just the scoreboard,
Absolutely. The shorter wins are what can help fuel you, and that can get you just enough. And then along the way, it's just really a test of faith, trust, and just knocking down those brick walls to show how badly you want something.
Yeah. And there's this great show that just came out on Netflix called Beef. Did you check it out?
No, I don't ever watch TV, Brad.
Okay, fair enough. Well, for those of us that do, it's this really wonderful thing where they study two people that get in a road rage incident, right? And it's a dramatization, right? But it's like they end up being mirrors of each other and going through this crazy, they have like 47 different opportunities to get off of this crazy hate train that they're on with each other. And they just keep escalating, keeps getting worse. And eventually they're just so in it. And then they have this shift where it's like all this humanity comes to be, and they start to see each other empathetically as basically different versions of themselves. And it's really wild. So it was really like a tour de force. And it's been on my mind a lot. And the reason I brought it up is because you just never know where you're at in that general scheme of things. And you don't know how other people see you, and you don't know where you're going, and you don't know kind of where all this is heading. But if you just you can get off the train at any time.
Yeah.
People get so caught up in the game of like, I got to do this. And they never just step back and be like, well, what am I actually doing here? Am I actually going where I want to go? Or am I just the path of hell is paved with good intentions or bad intentions, right? It's like, if you aim at the money, you're going to miss every time. If you aim at the service, at the connection, at the gratitude, at the fun, at the whatever, you're probably going to end up with a lot more money.
Yeah, absolutely. I believe in doing well or doing good. And if you focus on service, the money will come.
Yeah.
So, and if you focus on the money, not only will it not serve you, but it actually could deter you, and it could actually backfire, because then you get so beaten down because you expect the money to show up at a certain time and it doesn't.
Right.
And if that's your only scorecard, you're going to be in for a rude awakening. And then, you know what, you'll just get off the train and not do it anymore and just go back to playing it safe.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. And that's it. Like I tell everybody, you know, there's only so much you can save before you're at zero. You don't constrict yourself and worry. And, you know, we have so many forces working against us right now. Inflation is record high. You know, things are getting more expensive. People's salaries aren't even close to keeping up. And as entrepreneurs, we have this ability to scale up, right?
Yes.
We don't have to wait for anybody else to tell us what we can earn. We have to provide that level of service, but we really, it's up to us. You know, if we're willing to do the work.
I think entrepreneurship is a great, sorry. Okay. Entrepreneurship is a great thing, because you're absolutely right. The sky's the limit. Yeah. You know, when I was in corporate America, even though I made good money, great money to a lot of people, I was capped. Right. Right. But
there's
now,
no way you're making $3 million in that job. It just
exactly. Exactly. And now it's just relying on myself and knowing that I can create the magic, and really trusting in the guidance, and, you know, growing from there.
That's the game. That's what keeps me coming back. And there's a conversation I have with people all the time is like, you can only save your way to zero. Your income's technically unlimited. Focus on that. You know, yes. even versus investing. Like I'm known as an investment guy, and I've been managing investments a long time. I've been a hedge fund guy. People come to me for investment advice all the time. My best investment advice is make more fucking money. You know, you can make a lot. You're going to do a lot better with 10 million a year coming in than 1 million coming in, or 100,000 coming in. Even if you make a lot of mistakes investing.
Yeah.
You know, like I have a friend right now he's bringing in like $1 million a month after all his expenses.
That's great.
That's a big problem. You put $1 million.
I think I want that problem, Brad.
It's a good problem, but it's like, it's a problem. Like, where do you put that money where it's like safe and well diversified? And like, there's only so many deals around. There's only so many managers. There's only so many funds, you know, like, where are you going to put it all?
Yeah.
So that becomes that, you know, you have issues either way. It's like, decide which issues you want. I want those kind of issues. Personally.
Yeah, me too. You and me both.
But yeah, I'd rather have that problem than, I can't afford to live the way I want to live, you know?
Yep. Yep.
So, all right, Tri. So tell us about your program. What's it about? How does it work? How can people find out more about it?
Okay. Well, like I said, it's an e-learning format. It's a leadership development program called True Leadership Courage, or TLC. It's about leading from the inside out. And what does that mean? I believe that leadership starts with, you have to first have self-leadership. And so a big part of the program is understanding who you are and what really makes you tick, right? All your gifts, all your talents, maybe in a way that you might not have heard of in a traditional leadership program, because it's really going to push you out of your comfort zone. We talk about authentic self. We talk about egos. We talk about failure. We learn everything about looking at yourself from a holistic viewpoint, because I believe that before you can lead other people effectively, you have to lead yourself effectively. I've been in so many other leadership programs where that's not the case. And I feel like this is the game changer for my program, is that people have to look at themselves and look at their powerful self and owning that powerful self first. And then we get into IQ, which is how to better execute, and really marrying what we call book smart and street smart. You know, book smart is being able to know what you're doing. Street smart's the ability to apply what you know to really creating results. So how to put those two together, and, you know, living in this VUCA world, you talked about the ever-changing world. This is the world we live in. You know, everything is exponential at this point, whether it's inflation, whether it's growth, whichever side of the ledger you want to see it, everything is exponential and heightened. We got to keep up with that. And then the other port is mentorship quotient, which is how do you really truly be a mentor? What does that mean? You know, you said earlier, it makes a lot of sense, right? Everything we talked about is about mentorship, but how do you really do it? So we go into that. How do you really lead and guide and mentor, and more importantly, love the people that you work for? Because leadership really is about lovership, as I call it, not just leadership. Mm-hmm. So it's really operating from that space and bringing together both, the left side of the brain and the right side of the brain. So the program it's just that, it's just a lot of stuff, a lot of inner work as well as outer work, as I call it. It's both what I call the inner game, dealing with stuff inside your head, as well as the stuff that how you act and show up, in the best versions of yourself.
And who is it great for? Who would it not be a good fit for? Like, who's your target person that would be a really great
leaders who are really caring, who really want to create a culture where they value people, not just profit, but people along with profit. If you're really looking at execution, and really not looking at building a great corporate engaging culture, then this is not the program for you. This is one where you're willing to be vulnerable. You're willing to allow your team to be vulnerable and really adopt a growth mindset in terms of failure, in terms of development, in terms of the way you look at things. So those are the kinds of leaders that I would love to work with. The program is a 8-week e-learning where you can sign up, take the course, and then take the course as self-paced. You can also, along with the program, you can join on Thursdays for live Q&A, where you can be coached, ask questions, engage with your fellow participants. And then you have access to the whole module and all the workbooks for life.
Great.
So, yeah.
Love it. And where can people go to learn more about it? Where's the website?
Okay, they can go to The Wisdom Tree, and it's my name, TRI, a little play on my name there. So thewisdomandtree.com.
Okay.
They can see a little bit about the program. They can click on the Let's Chat, and they can book a call with me and we can chat, or they can download the syllabus and take a peek into the program. And then, give me a call, book a time with me. I'm happy to share more and learn more about what companies may be looking for and how I can help them.
That's perfect. Okay. So the Wisdom Tree, TRI.com. And
Yes.
that's go to the Let's Chat, grab a time on Tree's calendar and see if it'd be a great fit, as well as the syllabus and all that great stuff. And I'm sure you have other content and whatnot on the site. That's wonderful, Tree. Thank you so much for everything. Any parting words for the folks at home that you'd like to leave them with?
Well, you know what? In the spirit of Easter, since today's Easter Monday.
By the way, I saw the Easter Bunny twice.
You did. What's that?
There's a bunny outside my house that's like
you
around
saw,
my house.
Oh,
and he's now the Easter Bunny because I saw
you
him.
literally saw.
I was really happy.
Wow. I'm envious. I haven't been outside yet today, so I'm a little
few
envious.
little Easter eggs around too. They're brown and didn't look like candy, but
Well, one final word of wisdom. First off, thank you, Brad, for having me. Thank you to the audience for taking the time. Love to hear from you. And one last thing is, in the spirit of Easter, Easter is about awakening, right? It's about a rebirth. And I believe that we've been through so much the last 3 years. It's time for rebirth. It's time for the new part of ourselves to emerge. And I see that in leadership. I see that in everyone. And I encourage everyone to really tap in and look at what is in them, who is in them that they can bring forth more of and be of service to others, their community, their family, their friends.
I love it. Really beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you for being on the show. Thank you, everybody there, for listening. All you marble makers out there, is there any way we could support you, serve you? How can we add the most value to your life right now, Tree?
Oh, you know what? Send me good, positive vibes. I have a big mission to really reach 100,000 leaders by the year 2025. It coincides with 2025 coincides with 50 years of me being an immigrant from Vietnam. So, wow. Yeah, I know, 50 years, long time. And so to me, it carries for me, it's about helping, being of service to others. And I feel like my place and my voice is in helping leaders find their voice. And so please send me positive vibes and, keep me in your thoughts and prayers.
Thank you so much, Tree. Really appreciate you. And thank you for all the work you're doing in the world. Have a blessed day.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye,
Bye,
everybody.
Brad.